Paranormal in Pennsylvania may discuss topics such as suicide, murder, and other potentially upsetting things. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to Paranormal in Pennsylvania,
where we discuss history and hauntings.
Today's story takes us to a sanatorium. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Erica.
Let's get into it. So, Cresson Sanatorium is what we're discussing today. And we have had this one on the back burner for over a year now.
Yeah.
Because we really wanted to go there. But they're currently in a legal dispute, so it's temporarily closed. If you'd like to help preserve it, you can donate to it. You can just literally Google Cresson Sanatorium, Save Cresson. Definitely check it out. It's said to be incredibly haunted, and we hope to go one day. But for now, we'll just cover it from here.
Right.
So, the history. The Cresson Tuberculosis Sanatorium treated more than 40,000 patients suffering from tuberculosis between 1913 and 1964.
That's a lot. That number is pretty large for it being A, in the early 1900s, and B, only spanning, 50 years?
30? 50. 30. Math is hard.
It really is, though.
Yeah, 51 years. So that's 800 patients a year? That's a lot.
Yeah.
When you think about it. It was the first sanatorium to be racially integrated, have a nursing school, and have an elementary school.
Now, the elementary school kind of throws me off a little bit. Was that a thing? Okay, am I thinking of elementary school in the right setting as it being a school for kids?
Yes. And the reason is it would treat whole families.
Oh,
that might have tuberculosis.
Really cool.
So it's my understanding that especially in the 1910s, it was kind of just a management and try to cure type thing.
Right.
But it's all these people with tuberculosis, so they have to learn while they're there.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so if the whole family's there. It is built on land donated by Andrew Carnegie because he owns everything.
Yeah.
Even though it's not in Pittsburgh.
No.
It is not, but he just owned so much of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And it has a higher elevation, which apparently was helpful for the tuberculosis patients.
Okay, so in my head, I thought that higher elevation makes it harder for you to breathe.
It does.
Okay, so is it just that the air's clearer?
I think it is just a common health spa myth.
Okay.
But maybe there's something to it. Maybe the thinner air, I don't know. I think you're right, though. It makes it harder to breathe. That's why elevation sickness is a thing.
Yeah. I was thinking about people going to Colorado and having to train for even just going to the mountains to ski.
Yeah. When I was in Colorado for work and I went on a run, I felt like I was going to die.
Oh my God, I can imagine, yeah.
And you get a really wicked bad headache. So that's a great point. I don't know how it was helpful, but allegedly it was helpful somehow. It was both a hospital for temporary triage and a long-term residential care facility. So that's where the entire family comes into play for longer care. Because even if the tuberculosis is cured, I think it can result in lung scarring, etc. So they probably would need long-term care.
Yeah, that is nice that they thought about this and kind of put the thought into making the long-term care part of the facility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and hopefully make it comfortable.
Yes.
In the 60s, there were advancements in tuberculosis treatments, and thus the hospital changed into a treatment facility for the mentally ill because there was less long-term care required.
Mm.
In the 70s, there was a mysterious fire that broke out that trapped people inside.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Well, it's haunted.
Yeah.
Then in the 1980s, it became a prison, so that's a big shift.
Yeah. I don't know, but not a great shift.
And not what I would expect.
Yeah.
And notably, a serial killer named Joseph Callinger was an inmate here, and it closed in 2013.
I don't know if I recognize that name, but it sort of sounds familiar.
I thought the same thing. I was like, Callinger. I know a lot about serial killers, but I don't really know about him.
Yeah.
But yet I feel like I've heard his name.
Yes.
I feel like a lot of notorious serial killers come out of the Midwest. Like Wisconsin has John Wayne Gacy, etc. But maybe this is just a famous Pennsylvania serial killer that we've heard of.
Yeah, maybe that is a thing where it just like was a name we've heard.
Yeah. Prior to the temporary closure, which is due to the legal battle that I mentioned, you could tour the campus, including the tunnels beneath the facility. And it's a really sprawling campus, which is crazy. Allegedly, a significant number of deaths occurred there during the TB treatment phase, which does make sense for the 1910s.
Yes, my knowledge of tuberculosis is very limited. So I don't know if there's like a cure now or if we just use a vaccine to prevent it. But either way, I feel like back then the cure was probably non-existent, or like not non-existent, but even when they cured the person, lasting effects occurred throughout their entire life. So it doesn't surprise me. Even if it was like a really decent facility and they were trying to do as much as they possibly could, like a large number of people would still pass away.
Right. That's just the nature of, hospitals in that era, unfortunately.
Right.
Of course, this has lended to a very haunted location. So moving into the paranormal claims. 15 of the 27 buildings on the campus are known to be actively haunted, which is a huge portion.
Yes. Normally when we get places, we have 1 or 2, maybe 5, if we're doing a university. 15 out of 27?
Yeah, and that's why I think this would be such a cool investigation, because you could be there for multiple days.
Yes, that's a fair point.
Yeah. And one of the main reports is that it feels like you're constantly being watched there. There are reports of apparitions and shadow figures, but also some auditory hauntings, which your favorite, knocking, being the most common one to occur.
No, I don't love that. That was a very delayed response. I'm not loving that. Okay, apparitions, shadow figures, that makes sense. Knocks, I'm curious as to whether they were... these were rooms, right?
Yeah.
So that, I guess, does make sense, especially with families being there, right? Like, I'm just imagining the elementary school attendees kind of like knocking on each other's doors to either walk to the elementary schools together or play together.
That does make sense. That's a very positive spin.
I'm hoping.
Yeah, well. And then the other auditory, just general haunting is that of hearing voices throughout. And I think this also depends, through a skeptical lens, if you're in these abandoned, big, likely echoey buildings, you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt unless you're there by yourself, or if you're doing like a EVP session and everyone's silent, or an Estes session and everyone's silent and you hear voices, then I think there's more credence to the claim versus if you are just hearing echoey voices,
Yes, because there's that architectural phenomena. I don't even know if phenomena is the right word, but it's like if you whisper from one part of the room, you can hear it on the other side of the room. I'm not saying that architecture is going on here, but it might be something like that.
Yeah, like the whisper arches where you can whisper on one side and hear it on the other.
Yes.
That's a good point.
Yes.
And who knows if it's just happening to Carrie.
Right.
Staff actually had reports when there was active staff there. They reported seeing people roaming the halls even when the doors were locked. And previous staff members have said that they quit because the hauntings made them feel actively unsafe.
That's a huge report, I think, in my head that lends itself to the paranormal because, we all work. We all have to work. And so it's kind of insane to me that it's like they're so terrified and feel so unsafe that they're just leaving their jobs. And
to see people roaming the halls when the doors were locked, that sounds terrifying. Imagine if that happened when it was a prison.
Oh, yeah, no, that's not. Oh my gosh, no. Prisoners would probably think that they were like hallucinating.
Oh.
Or like not doing well mentally.
That's true. Or the guards would think that. Everyone could think that.
That's very true.
Yeah, I didn't actually think about how it would affect people if they didn't assume it was a haunting.
Right. Because, okay, so I'm thinking the staff, if they're reporting it, then at least they have probably like camaraderie amongst themselves about talking about these hauntings. But who knows if this was happening when it was a prison. Who knows if they were able to like communicate with each other and talk about what they were seeing.
Yeah, it's a good point. The tunnels specifically are known to be incredibly haunted, and oftentimes people put motion sensors down there for their investigations, and they're often activated even when no one is near them. Additionally, in the tunnels, there have been reports of banging when no one else is down there.
That's an interesting one, just because obviously banging is very intense. So I don't know that one could be like a trick of the ear.
Right. I was trying to think of like slamming accidentally a piece of equipment into the tunnels, but you would have to be in a metal tunnel. And I think they're dirt.
That is also a good point. Because I for a second was like, oh my gosh, yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, I guess it would have to be metal.
Yeah. In addition to the tunnels, buildings E and F have some auditory hauntings, specifically unexplained sounds and phantom footsteps. Doors regularly slam in these buildings, and it's been reported that they'll actually slam in response to questions from investigators. So it's kind of like if you were using a REM pod and saying like, hey, get close to the device on the floor if it's yes, or can you show us that you're here? But instead it's just slamming doors, which sounds so much more terrifying.
Yes. So we always say when it comes to things like slamming doors or windows shutting that it could be the wind, it could be a draft, any one of these things. But when it's in response to questions, that's crazy.
Yeah. And it's clear to me that something doesn't want them there if it's making that much noise with the banging, the slamming, etc.
If I was in a room and I asked a question and the door slammed, I'd be like, message received. Goodbye. Yeah.
Yeah. Goodbye. Paranormal Quest, which is a YouTube channel, actually spent 2 nights investigating this place because, again, it's so massive, you can't do it in just one day. They captured a variety of sounds throughout the night, including slamming, dragging, and a voice saying, "Got me again," repeatedly.
Oh, that's a little terrifying.
Right, I just imagine it's almost like, remember that like Staples button?
Yes.
It's like that, but it's like, got me again, got me again, got me again.
So is the dragging happening with the voice?
I believe they were 3, like these are isolated auditory occurrences.
Because I was going to say, if you hear dragging and then someone saying, got me again, that almost logically makes sense. You're like, oh yeah, okay, somebody's dragging this. But alone, I'm very curious as to what the circumstances are.
But I like where you're going. So it could be the slamming of the door. So maybe it's like sneaking into the room and then dragging someone. And they're like, oh, got me again.
Yeah.
Okay. I see how it could be a story,
Yeah.
Paranormal Quest reported that the church is specifically very haunted. And allegedly there's a crawler there, which is a large black figure with long limbs that crawls down the aisle and up to the ceiling and across it, like a spider.
That sounds like a horror movie, to be honest. Like, most of the hauntings that we've talked about, I think literally up until this point, to me, have felt real and not sensationalized. That to me, and I'm not saying that it's not real or that someone's making this up or anything. I'm just saying this particular fact makes me feel like we're in a horror movie.
Yes, and I thought the same thing. I thought this is just a trick of the eye. It can be really freaky when you're at some of these locations. But then they actually on the website show a depiction of it. And it does look like a shadow creature with incredibly long limbs. So they did capture something. And if you don't believe me, well, not you, the audience. If the audience doesn't believe me, they can go to Paranormal Quest's YouTube account and look at the image.
I do want to. I'm so curious, but I think like I have to be careful because once I've seen it, that's it. There's no taking it back.
Mm-hmm. And it's definitely freaky. And if we ever go, that will be in your mind, burned into it.
It's times like these where I appreciate that I can't picture anything because that does help.
That's true. I forgot about that. The investigators point out that this place is different from most places where you have an idea of who the ghosts will be because, again, the history here has varied so much. So it could be inmates. It could be children. etc. And that makes it harder because, of course, you want to understand the history to understand the hauntings, but also actively during the investigation, it's harder because how do you appeal to the spirits there?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
So they first tried with children. So they brought toys and then they put REM pods throughout the hallway to try to engage that way. And I'm assuming most people listening know what a REM pod is, but if you don't, REM pods emit a low electromagnetic field that reacts to energy changes in the proximity. So if I were to put one on the table and get close to it, it would either beep or light up or both to signify that something changed in the field. So the theory here is that if a spirit is interacting or walking past, the REM pod's going to pick up the energy change. And the ones that they used had both LED lights and auditory tones. Mm-hmm. And they asked the spirit to pick its favorite toy and light up that REM pod. So they it would be like REM pod, then a teddy bear, a REM pod, and then a Hot Wheels or something like that. And then when they ask if the spirit wants to play, the REM pods light up.
That's really cute.
I know.
Honestly, it reminds me of those videos online where people have their cats choose their collars. You know what I'm talking about? Where they lay out all the collars and then the cat gets to choose one. That's what I'm thinking of right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like pick your own name. So ghost hunters also went here. And they said that the reason for going is that the staff were dealing with aggressive behavior from ghosts. They were joined by the Ghost Brothers and an independent ghost hunter. So we have a variety of people here.
Okay.
They captured knocking, and they asked that the ghost knock equal to the number of people in the building, and it correctly knocked 4 times.
Oh, that's so creepy. I mean, kind of cool that you're picking this up, but also a little freaky.
I like it because I think it takes the knocking, which can a lot of times feel like more of a nonsensical haunting, I think, to me, and gives it intelligence.
Yeah.
You know, it makes me think that the knocking that other people have been hearing is not just random. And it makes me wonder when the knocking is occurring. Like, is it you're walking into a room and then you hear knocking and maybe the ghost is saying like, hey, you were supposed to knock before entering.
Right.
For example. They captured other noises, including additional knocking and then some figures. And they specifically asked if Joseph Callinger is there, but they got no response.
I guess that does make sense. I mean, I wouldn't expect him to be here, I think is my thing. I guess I know that we have seen figures like Al Capone in other, an Eastern state, but I don't know if that's like a normal thing I would expect.
Right. I think they wouldn't want to stay there, especially if they're so notorious. They probably have a lot of places that they could be.
Yes.
In the morgue, the investigators used special cameras to capture what appears to be a figure moving rapidly towards them.
No thanks.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder what it is. Is it a guard that used to guard the morgue and they just don't want anybody in there? Is it someone that used to work there that's saying, hey, get out? Is it a spirit that's just trying to startle them?
Right.
I mean, we'll never actually know.
Right.
They also investigated the power plant and asked specifically for victims of the fire that happened there. And they believe that they got to speak to the ghost of a small boy, with multiple people reporting seeing an actual small boy.
Oh.
And his name was Brian Leher. I don't know how to pronounce it. Lehrer. And they use a V-pod to interact with him, which is like a REM pod, but a little bit smaller. And the ghost does light it up, but they can't get him to specifically communicate with yes or no questions.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. I was going to say maybe because he's a small child, it might be hard to communicate. Maybe he doesn't like fully understand how to if his brain is not fully developed. But if it's just yes or no questions, you would think at least they would be able to do that.
And I do wonder, though, with the small child thing, if maybe he's scared and maybe he just doesn't want to interact with them.
Maybe he was just trying to get out of the room and set off the pod, and then, but at that point he was already gone. You know what I mean? Like, he's like running past and sets off the V pod and is like, that's oh, funny. Crap, and then like runs out.
See, my thought was he set it off and he's like, oh, now I have to stay.
Yeah.
It's like, now I have to talk to these people. They just annoy me. That's funny. They did capture some voices in the tunnels. They said hello just to kind of start the EVP collection, and they capture someone quietly saying hello back to them. Ooh. And it doesn't sound like an echo.
You know, I wouldn't have thought of it possibly being an echo, but that's cool that they kind of debunked that.
Mm-hmm. And in the room where tuberculosis patients were housed, they captured a voice saying, "I am here."
Oh.
Again, I think it could be such a variety. Like, is it a patient saying, "I'm here for treatment"? Is it a doctor saying, "I'm here for treatment"? Is it a spirit that has knowledge that it's a spirit saying, "Hey, I'm here"? I think it could be a wide variety of things.
My brain went immediately to the third one. Like, I was thinking of a spirit who maybe hasn't been able to communicate with anyone and is kind of stuck there and is saying, "I'm here," because they feel like no one can see them.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most likely.
Yeah.
A group called POV Paranormal also did a ghost hunt here. Again, this is a very notorious place. And they captured footage of a backpack being lifted up and put down. Yes. So I think it also depends on how much you trust all of these groups. I don't know anything about POV Paranormal, so I'm not saying that they've doctored anything. I will say any of the groups we have mentioned could be doing something to sensationalize the hauntings, because we see a lot of that, unfortunately, in the paranormal community.
Right.
So because I wasn't there and I didn't capture the footage myself, I can't say if it actually happened, but the footage does look very creepy. It's just like lifted and put down.
It's interesting to me because the movement of lifting up a backpack and putting it down is so small, and to us might feel insignificant, but this might be like a spirit's full strength of
Yes.
like trying to lift this full backpack off the ground.
Yes. Actually, I don't know if you've ever seen the TV show Ghosts, but it's both a British and a US version. In the first episode, for spoiler alert for both of them, it's like a group of ghosts from different eras and they're all trapped together. I think I've mentioned it in other episodes. One of the ghosts has the power to move stuff, and he's showing them and he's like, "Okay, look, everybody watch." And he like uses his full force and he moves a vase like a centimeter. And everyone's like, "Oh my God, look at that." And it's his full force.
Yeah.
So I think it's what you're saying is a good point. This might be full exertion for the spirit.
Yeah.
So POV Paranormal also caught apparitions on camera, and the figure that was the easiest to see, it walked across a hall and appeared to be an old man in a nightgown. And this could be from when it was a hospital, which would make a lot of sense.
Yes, definitely. Especially like part of a family, you know?
They also reported hearing talking and footsteps during their time there. Again, not associated with other investigators. While investigating, they saw a light in the building that appeared to go from window to window. And initially they thought that someone broke in because it is an abandoned building, well, abandoned campus rather, with 27 buildings. But when they went in, they said that no one else was there. So what they think is it could be maybe pre-electricity, someone with a candle going from window to window.
So I was thinking, and again, I don't know what kind of light it is, so maybe this is way off base, but I was thinking of it being like a guard doing like bed checks.
Oh, so for hospital or prison or both?
So I think my brain thought prison, like them doing like kind of bed checks for every room, depending on what building it was.
Mm-hmm.
But also it could be a hospital, like someone checking in on everybody before they go to sleep.
Yeah, like a night nurse making rounds.
Yeah.
That's true. It could be a variety. I just thought that it was a patient walking with a candlestick, but any of these could be true, and we'll never know.
Right.
So the investigators also reported negative effects on technology, and we see this a lot. One investigator reported that the camera battery began draining so rapidly that he felt like it was the spirit interacting with him and wanting to leave him without a light source because he was alone.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, I think it's very creepy. And I always wonder, are they draining the technology because they don't understand it? Because it's from, it being the ghost is from 1913.
Right.
Are they draining it because they don't want to be on camera and they do know what it is? They just want you to go away. I think it's a variety of reasons that this could be happening.
Definitely.
Or it could be they want to scare the person and leave them without a light.
Which is admittedly terrifying.
Yeah, I don't
in
like
a setting
the dark.
like that. No.
Yeah, especially alone in this like old campus with 27 buildings.
Yes.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Yeah.
So that's all the investigations that I could find on Cresson. Overall, it seems like people have struggled to interact with any named ghosts to really get their history. We know that I like a character type ghost where we know who they are and what their history is. And it seems like the ghosts here are pretty passive. No one wanted to interact. No one's necessarily tricking you or trying to play games with you, other than maybe the spirit that wanted to drain the light. But it seems like whatever is here really just wants to be left alone and exist.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, whether they were there while it was a hospital or a prison, you know, there is sort of like a negative energy associated with both, especially when it was tuberculosis. So, yeah, I think it makes sense in my head that maybe they just want to be left alone.
So, all that being said, would you visit this place of paranormal phenomena?
I would. And not to make light of it, but all I can think of right now is crescent rolls, and I am so hungry. Just gonna throw that out there. But no, I would. I think it would be a really interesting like investigation to do. Like you said, we could do it over multiple days, so we could really focus on each of the buildings that were, you know, instead of running through all of them really quickly. But yeah, I think that would be a really cool setting for it. And again, like we always say, when there's so much history and it's changed hands so many times, those are also really interesting places to do investigations. It sounds like so far no one has really gotten a ton of like variance in the spirits, but it's possible that they are there.
Yeah. I would love to go here for a ghost hunt. I think, yeah, multiple days. I don't know about sleeping there overnight.
Ooh, that's a good point.
I don't think I would want to do that.
I don't think so either.
I think probably purely because of the type of building that it is. Again, it doesn't seem like any of the spirits really want to hurt you or attack you or anything, so not scared for that reason. But a run-down prison hospital where people are regularly worried about other people breaking in, no thank you, I'll sleep somewhere else.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
So that is the history and hauntings of Cresson Sanatorium. You can get more information on their website. You can read more about the legal battle, etc. There's a ton of information on this place out there, so feel free to go look up some on your own. And tune in next Thursday to see what history and hauntings we discuss next. Stay spooky, my friends.